Hey, this is part 2. Watch part 1 here, or stick around for a recap. Of a recap. Is this getting ridiculous? If you've already seen part 1, you can skip to here to just get right into it. There's about to be spoilers for part 1. Okay, bye. Ichiro Inuyashiki is a middle-aged man with a seemingly uncaring family. One day, he gets diagnosed with cancer and is given only months to live. That night, in a park, he and a teen are crashed into by an alien spaceship, and both of them get restored into advanced cyborg bodies. As they discover the powers their new bodies now hold, Ichiro uses them exclusively to help and save others, while the teen, Hiro Shishigami, causes nothing but death and destruction. Following a string of murders committed by Shishigami, the police track him down. Upon seeing the police storm his house, Shishigami runs out the back door, only to be completely surrounded by a dozen cops. They all attack him together and begin holding him down. He can hear his mother crying, asking what he's done that would bring the police here, when he effortlessly throws all of the cops off of himself and begins running away. Once out of view, he activates his jets and flies off. After he lands, he taps into the news stations and can see he's been reported on all over Japan, stating that he is the one responsible for the home invasions and murders that have been occurring. Nearby, Shion finds him and lets him stay with her at her grandmother's house, thinking that he must have been framed for the murders. Elsewhere, Ando is teaching Ichiro how he can integrate his phone into his body, using knowledge Shishigami told him. He instructs Ichiro to rub his finger over a USB port, just like he's trying to scan it, and then disturbingly lifts his fingernail, which now has the scanned USB port in it. Ando connects the phone, and Ichiro's phone appears in front of his eyes. He sets up a phone number, so now Ando can communicate with him hands-free while he's flying. They begin to test it out. Ichiro flies up high, and they can still hear each other fine. Ando tells him to go up even further. Ichiro reaches plane cruising altitudes and it still works. He goes up even further and reaches the International Space Station, telling Ando he's been found out, still hearing him just fine. Ichiro then flies back down. No one will ever believe what you saw here. We cut to Shishigami, crying, while watching the news in his eyes. News reporters have found out where his mother lives and are barraging her with questions. She says that her son has done something no human should ever do, and as a parent, she doesn't know how she can truly take responsibility for his actions. But she says that she is incredibly sorry for the things he has done. Shishigami then goes to the internet text board 2chan and reads comments insulting his mother, the police, and himself. Elsewhere, Ando is also on the same board reading the comments and has a bad feeling about what Shishigami might do. Later that night, as Shishigami is going to sleep, he is watching a comedy when breaking news reports that his mother has committed suicide. Distraught, he emotionlessly makes his way outside, where he flies high into the sky, crying and screaming. The next day, news reporters barrage the house of Shishigami's father, asking him all kinds of questions when Shishigami shows up. Feeling like the news reporters are the reason for his mother's suicide, he lets out a bit of rage. Oh, and he also upgraded his gat. Upon killing everyone there except his father, he dips out. While walking the streets aimlessly, he continues to read posts on 2chan, which are making fun of his mother's suicide. He reads one post that claims he lives close by, so he sent the media their home address and a picture of the house. Shishigami replies to this post, saying that he will kill him. They all call him a troll when he says found you, coming now. We cut to one of the users, laughing at Shishigami, calling him insane, saying he will kick his ass. When suddenly, video feed of Shishigami appears on his screen. He then asks him if he knows what he's about to do to him, when he shoots him in the leg. The 2chan user, crying out in pain, then says it was just a prank bro, just a bit of trolling with the boys, claiming that he didn't actually send anything to the media, when Shishigami pulls up the emails that he sent. After this, the user recoils in fear, calling out for help. Shishigami messes with him by shooting around him. The user, thinking he is safe not being in line of sight, says screw you to Shishigami, when he appears on the laptop in front of him, shooting and killing him. He then uploads the footage to 2chan to the shock of all users, before stating that he is now going to kill them all in the order they posted. And Shishigami, unlike most internet trolls, actually follows through on his threats, until everyone in the message board is dead. That night, overwhelmed by recent events, he makes his way back to Shion's house, where he proceeds to remain for the next couple of days. Early one morning, Shion enters his room, saying that she hopes they hurry up and catch whoever's been doing these horrible things. He sits up, casually telling her that he is the killer. She tells him to stop lying, but he says it's the truth. He says that he died on that night in the park and became something else. He couldn't escape the thought that he is a machine, made of metal without a heart, no longer truly alive, and he describes how he felt nothing but a bottomless darkness. He was terrified, until he remembered a time, before he became a cyborg, that he saw someone commit suicide by jumping in front of a train. He says that upon seeing the dead body, he felt a spark light up inside of him, and now he has no choice but to kill people with his own hands, to somehow feel that spark and connection to being human again. She says she doesn't understand what he's talking about and refuses to accept that he's not human. When he drags her outside, wraps his arms around her, and flies high into the sky, he tells her that everyone in the world is now his enemy, and he is going to kill more people. To his shock, she tells him that she doesn't want him to go away and leave herself and her grandmother behind, saying that she's got nobody else. He doesn't get what she's saying, asking her isn't she scared when she says she wants him to stay at home with them. He grabs her tightly, saying okay, he'll stay with them. He'll stay with them forever. She asks him if he will turn himself over to the police, which he replies by saying no way. She then says but he's killed so many people who all had dreams for the future and people who loved and cared about them. He asks her what she wants him to do, and she replies saying that she's devastated because there's nothing that can be done. As the sun rises over Tokyo, Shishigami tells her that starting now, he'll save the lives of people who are about to die, telling her he'll save as many lives as he's taken, asking her if that will work. Over the course of 2 months, Shishigami, under the guidance of Shion, proceeds to cure people of their terminal illnesses all over Japan. One night, he takes Shion for a flight across Tokyo. He asks her if she's bored of flying every day, and she replies saying that she could never get bored of this. Out over the ocean, she says this is amazing, and Shishigami promises to cherish her forever. Not exactly the ending we expected, but a good one nonetheless. Oh, what's this? There's 4 more episodes still. Oh, it gets dark, doesn't it? Later that night, as they're all asleep, we see a specialized assault team squaring up outside the house. Inside, Shion walks into the kitchen to get a glass of water, when red lasers begin aiming at her, and we see the assault team. Shion tells Shishigami to run when the bullets start flying. We see the team focus firing on Shishigami, giving him everything they've got, when he notices the bodies of both Shion and her grandmother behind them, who must have got caught up in the crossfire. He blows the assault team up with his cannon, grabbing Shion and her grandmother, making his way out. He activates his jets, taking them far away. After he lands, he heals them from their wounds and tells them he is so sorry before leaving. Elsewhere, at Ichiro's house, as the family is getting ready for the day, the news reports on a massive asteroid that is approaching Earth, apparently 5 times the size of the one that killed the dinos. On her way home from school, Ichiro's daughter, Mari, sees her father walking around with Ando. Wondering what's going on, she begins to trail them, and follows them to a hospital. She follows them inside, and sees them enter one of the wards for the terminally ill. Peeking in, she sees him curing someone, and immediately Googles about the miraculous healings going on in Japan. She continues to follow them, when they go down an alley, Ichiro having taken his shirt off, telling Ando there is a fire nearby before he flies off high into the sky. Mari is shook. Later that night, in an act of revenge, Shishigami goes to the Tokyo Police Department, where he asks the officer standing out the front if he recognizes him. It takes the officer a few seconds, but he eventually does. Shishigami then proceeds to mercilessly take out the entire police department, only leaving one officer alive to tell the tale. The officer says that it doesn't matter what he does here, they will track him down to the ends of the earth, when Shishigami says bet, telling the officer to just watch, he'll be the one to win. As Shishigami makes his way out of the police department, he sees that a special forces squad has set up a blockade. As he walks towards them, a sniper from the rooftops shoots him in the head, knocking him to the ground. He then gets surrounded, and upon opening his eyes, all members of the squad open fire. He manages to fight back for a while before getting knocked out. Then, his automated defense systems take over. It flies him into the air before locking onto all police and special forces members, using his body's laser rays to kill everyone there. After, his unconscious body lands on the hood of a car, and it conveniently begins to rain. 10 minutes later, 2 of the very few remaining officers approach him, wondering what the hell he is and why hasn't he moved. He swallows some of the rainwater and comes back to life, killing the 2 officers. The man from inside the station earlier is also there, and he tells Shishigami it's over. He's won. Shishigami walks off, saying it's not over yet. The next day, Ando and Ichiro are talking about how serious it's getting, with neither of them knowing what he might do next. Ichiro has been trying to detect him in the local area, but he can't pick anything up, and Ando has been trying to call him, but the calls go unanswered. The next day, in the busy district of Shinjuku, Shishigami's face suddenly appears on all of the televisions. He announces that as long as this country exists, he will continue to be pursued, and so, he has come up with the great idea to destroy the entire country. He tells everyone that this is a war between himself and Japan, and he will continue killing until there is no one left. The TVs then revert back to normal, and we cut to Shishigami, alone on a rooftop, saying, let's get this started. He aims his blicky at a camera in his hand. We cut back to the streets of Shinjuku. Everyone is wondering what the hell that was all about with the TV screens, when we then see several more people get shot and panic begins to set in, with everyone thinking that he must be on a rooftop somewhere, sniping. We cut to a news anchor, who receives a phone call from Shishigami, broadcasting live on TV. Shishigami tells the man that he doesn't really like him. The news anchor replies, saying himself and Japan will never forgive him, and if he thinks he will be protected by juvenile criminal laws, he's dead wrong. Elsewhere, Ando, who has been watching everything go down, tells Ichiro that Shishigami must be using their smartphones to attack people. Using Ichiro's ability to hack into networks, Ando sends out a message, telling everyone that Shishigami is using their smartphones to commit his murders, ordering them all to get rid of their smartphones now. Shishigami notices this, then listens into the network and is shocked to hear Ando's voice. A short time later, everything goes back to some normality in Shinjuku, when he again appears on the TV screen, letting everyone know that that's useless to throw their smartphones away, and says let's get this show on the road then. He begins shooting from the TV screens into the crowds, killing a multitude of people. Ando tells Ichiro that the killings have started back up, and Ichiro says that he's going to Shinjuku to try and find him. About 30 minutes later, after Shishigami has killed 100 people, he announces that that's it for today's quota. He goes on to say today was a test drive, and tomorrow will be the real deal. Starting tomorrow, he plans to kill 1,000 people a day. Later that night, Shishigami is reflecting to himself how it seems that Ando has teamed up with the police, and finds it amusing that Ando is now his one true enemy. The next day, school is somehow still being held, and as Ichiro's children make their way to school, Mari makes the right choice and pats Hanako, warming up to her, saying that she'll get her a treat on the way home. After school, Mari and her friend make their way to the Shinjuku observation deck. Once at the top, they decide to stay there until night, to get a good look at the lights of Tokyo. Meanwhile, we see Shishigami, on top of a tall skyscraper. And similar to earlier, when he was controlling the traffic like a conductor, he now begins to control the planes flying above Tokyo. We cut to Ando, who is walking through the streets, when he sees a man who is stopped, looking at the sky. Ando follows his gaze and he sees it, a plane falling from the sky into the city. We cut to Ichiro, who can hear people crying out that they're going to crash. And outside, we see several more planes falling from the sky, with one crashing into the building that Mari is in. Ichiro immediately runs outside and flies up high to get an overview of the damage, appalled at what Shishigami has done. Ando then tells him that a second wave of planes are coming. Ichiro springs into action, flying under one of the planes to try and steer it to a safe landing point. He then begins to override Shishigami's control of the planes, making it so they follow him to a safe point, where he miraculously manages to land not only the plane he was under, but all other planes that were affected by Shishigami. He gets a phone call from Mari, pleading for help, telling him that they're in the observation deck in Shinjuku, and one of the planes crashed into the building so the stairs are blocked and the elevators aren't working. She tells him there are fires and smoke everywhere. He tells her that he'll be right there, when he hears Shishigami behind him, who asks who he is before shooting him. Ichiro recoils but withstands the attack. Ichiro tells him that he was there in the park the night of the crash. Shishigami asks him why he's getting in his way then. Aren't they the same? Ichiro responds, saying he only feels truly human when he saves the lives of others. This shocks Shishigami, and he begins to tear up, realizing that he is the villain and this old man is the hero. Ichiro tells him how horrible that must be for him, that he only feels human when he takes lives. He then tells him that his daughter is about to die. He has to leave. He begs him to please stop killing people. As Ichiro is about to fly off, Shishigami runs in with a punch. He beats him up before kicking him back onto the ground and proceeds to light him up. Ichiro eventually manages to get a shot in, before he starts to light Shishigami up, who then pulls out a cannon. Upon seeing this, worried for the safety of others, Ichiro flies up and away, chased quickly by Shishigami. They begin to fly through the city, with Shishigami using his laser rays to try and knock Ichiro out of the sky. While evading Shishigami's attacks, Ichiro receives another call from Mari, who, while fading in and out of consciousness, asks him to tell her mum that she loves her, and that she loves all of them so much. Worried for his daughter's safety, this causes Ichiro to go on the offensive towards Shishigami, and with one clean hit from his lasers, knocks him unconscious. However, Shishigami's automated defense system then kicks in, and then, after fighting back, manages to knock Ichiro out, and his defense system kicks in. Their systems are evenly matched, until we see that Ichiro's system has brought a satellite from outer space down, which he then blows up. Shishigami's system is scanning through the debris, when Ichiro, who was hiding in a piece of scrap behind him, jumps onto his back, managing to rip the backplate of his head off, and then his arms. They both fall back to Earth, Shishigami landing on a street somewhere, and Ichiro landing in a river. A few moments pass, and Ichiro blasts out of the river, and races over to the burning building Mari is in. Upon making his way inside, he finds the dead body of his daughter. Distraught, he begins CPR, as he can't heal those who are dead. After a few minutes, with no sign of it working, he thinks the worst and doesn't know what he can do, when he immediately races back over and heals her. She begins to cough, and after a moment of them hugging, he flies them down to the streets. She hugs him, saying she was so scared, when he tells her to just wait a moment. He flies back up to the top, bringing down Mari's friend and saving her too, before again flying off, saving everyone else who was on the floor. He tells Mari that it seems like the trains are running again, and says there are still others that he needs to save, and he'll be back in the morning. He goes around, saving and healing anyone he can find, with onlookers thinking that he must be some kind of god. As he flies over the city, he thinks to himself that he finally knows the reason he was born. After 58 years, he finally knows why things turned out this way. He was born for this moment. He became a machine just for this moment. Elsewhere, two women are walking the streets when they come across Shishigami's mangled body. They think he's just some kind of doll, when he asks for water and they give him some juice. In the morning, Ichiro returns home, and upon entering the living room, he finds his family all there looking at him. On the TV, we see camera footage of him the previous night, miraculously healing people just by touching them. Mary asks if that was really him, when he falls to his knees, opening his body completely. He apologizes to them, saying that he may not be Ichiro Inuyashiki anymore, that he is probably just a fake machine that was built to look just like him. He turns to leave, saying he's sorry for keeping it quiet until now, when Mary places a hand on his shoulder and asks him about where they went for their honeymoon and what happened throughout the day. He accurately recalls it and she hugs him, telling him to please stay. Elsewhere, Ando returns home and enters his room, and standing there in the dark is Shishigami. He tells Ando that the old man was really strong. Ando changes the subject and tells him that he's got the latest issue of Shonen Jump and asks if he wants to read it. Of course he wants to read it. Are you crazy? Ando then tells Shishigami that he has to go to the bathroom, where he calls up Ichiro, telling him that Shishigami is at his house right now. He says he'll be right over. Back in his room, Shishigami checks up on him, asking about if he's still going to school, or if he's being bullied still, before asking about the old man. Ando admits that he just called him here, and even if Shishigami kills him, the old man will destroy him. Shishigami says he's not here for any of that. He's just here to see him. He just wanted to hang out in his room and read manga like before. Ando tells him that he's not Shishigami anymore. He's just a killing machine. He's a fake that has no heart. Shishigami stands up, and to the shock of Ando, is crying. Ichiro rings the doorbell, but by the time he makes it in, Shishigami is gone. Sometime later, after a day out, Ichiro's family is in the living room and they turn on the TV. Oh yeah, I forgot they put him in this. Remember that little asteroid I mentioned earlier? Yeah, well it turns out the US's best attempt at destroying it failed. It is on a direct course with Earth, and in 3 days it will make impact.
The rest of you losers can go do whatever the hell you want.
With this in mind, as time ticks down, society begins to stop functioning. No one understandably shows up to their jobs, and the streets are empty. One night, Ichiro gets a call from Ando. He says who would have guessed it would end up like this, and tells him that he's so scared. Ichiro tells him that he's going to try until the very end to save them, even if it makes no difference. He tells Ando that he can hear everyone from all over the world, all their cries and screams, all asking for help. Ando says it's not fair that he's the one that has to do this. He tells Ando not to worry, he will come back. Ichiro then gives Hanako the biggest hug, and goes downstairs to stock up on water. Look at that belly. On his way out, Mari is standing in the doorway, and asks him where he's going. He tells her that he's going up to the asteroid, that he doesn't want to give up until the very end. Mari hugs him, telling him she doesn't want him to go. His family hears this and they start to make their way down. He promises Mari that he'll be back, before he flies off. His family watches him go, with Hanako trying to chase after him. Ichiro makes his way to the asteroid, where he proceeds to try his best to destroy it. But after a few hours, he only manages to punch a little hole in it, and he's starting to run low on water, when he sees Shishigami nearby, who calls him so they can speak. Ichiro is shocked to see him, but Shishigami knew that he would be here. Shishigami says that he came here to try and shift the trajectory of the asteroid. Confused, Ichiro asks him why, and he tells him that even he has people he cares about deeply, like Shion and Ando. He doesn't want either of them to die. Ichiro says there's nothing they can do. They can't refill their water up here. When Shishigami asks him if he remembers when they got turned into machines, one of the aliens said they have the power to destroy an entire planet. He ran some simulations, and he says if he self-destructs in this specific spot, it should be enough to shift its path away from Earth. He tells Ichiro that he can head back, but before he does, as his hands are gone, he asks him if he could push his eyes into his head, as that is the activation switch. Shishigami hangs up, and Ichiro calls Ando, telling him that Shishigami is right in front of him, and has come here to self-destruct because he doesn't want Ando to die. Ando starts crying, realizing that Shishigami really did just want to hang out and read manga one last time. Ichiro presses on Shishigami's eyes, activating the self-destruct function, and flies off. Shishigami explodes, and night turns into day for a moment down in Japan. Ichiro lands back on the asteroid, wondering if it's safe now. He runs some simulations which indicate that it's still heading for Earth, and even if he shoots all of his missiles, it still won't be enough. However, if he self-detonates, then the asteroid will be completely destroyed. He receives a phone call from Ando, who asks if he's alright. He says he is, and tells him that because of Shishigami, the world is now safe. He tells Ando he's heading home now, and Ando says he'll come by and see him tomorrow. Ichiro looks upon the world one last time, thinking to himself, this is how he always knew it was going to end. Pressing his thumbs into his eyes, activating the self-destruct sequence. Down below, we see his family and Ando, all crying out upon seeing the second explosion, knowing it was him sacrificing himself to save the Earth. And we get the answer to Ichiro's question from the start. They would cry for you, buddy. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you enjoyed, please like and subscribe. It only takes a second and it really helps me out.